Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So obviously we have a third voice on us with us, and you'll probably recognize it from many past episodes, and that's Morgan from Podcast of the Dragon.
Welcome back.
Always excited to have you back.
Hi, how are you guys?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. Spring is springing. We got a lot of rain here. It has been very, very rainy. Over an inch of rain in my rain gauge this morning. So spring is being quite spring-like, which is nice.
I can look up and see blue skies and rain right now. So yes, it's definitely spring.
The sun break turned off. Now it's gray out again. So
Not only blue skies, hail and blue skies right now.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Have
you
one
can
of
hear
those.
that. Yep. But it's currently, wow. My God, that's like giant chunks of hail coming down right now. Yeah.
that is what that. Yeah, okay, I hear it vaguely in the background. Isn't living in Oregon fun?
I got to turn that gain up for a second just to see if you can get it.
Yeah, Oregon spring weather. So yeah, that's just kind of where my mind is at. It's just like, wow, the season's turning and everything is spiffy.
Well, awesome sauce.
It's raise season, so I'm either about to be very happy or very disappointed, depending on what my boss decides to tell me in about a month.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so should we dig into Crossroads of Twilight, Chapter 4, A Tale of a Doll with the Seanchan symbol at the top?
Or did you want to knock out the little chunk of Winter's Heart that we were going to do? Because it's barely a paragraph, and it sort of dovetails off of the one we did at the end of last episode. I think it would go well at the beginning of this episode.
I vote for that.
I actually do vote for that as well. That does make a lot of sense. Let's change gears. Switch over to
Opening
the
a
other
different
book.
book. Quick, pull out the other book.
Let me
Okay,
let's
and
swap this
that
Kindle.
audiobook timestamp is for, in that chapter, minute 30, second 51. It's the Timna perspective.
Oh, and I actually have it here because I read it second when I was doing my notes last night and was like, I don't think I have any notes for this. Beyond the fact that this person sounds sanctimonious about the
Well, based on what's about to happen.
Yeah. Like sanctimonious cult leader does sound about right.
like not quite Jim Jonesy, but you know.
Not.
Not. It's not divided.
I mean, it's over multiple generations, so it's a
Right.
little different. But like at the end of the day, there is Kool-Aid. So sorry, it wasn't Kool-Aid. That's anachronistic. Sorry.
Yeah, dude, it was Flavor Aid.
Yes, I know.
Cheap,
I'm sorry.
cheap Flavor Aid. Okay. Strolling lost in thought, Timna barely saw the fallow fields that covered all the hillsides but one around her. Tremalking was a large island, and this far from the sea the wind carried no hint of salt, yet it was the Athan Mier that troubled her. They refused the waterway, yet Timna was one of the guides chosen to protect them from themselves if possible. That was very difficult now, with them all in an uproar over this cormer of theirs. Very few remained on the island. Even the governors, always fretting at being away from the sea as the Athan Mier did, had set sail to search for him at any craft they could find. Suddenly the one unplowed hill caught her eye. A great stone hand stuck out of the ground, clasping a clear sphere as large as a house, and that sphere was shining like a glorious summer sun. All thoughts of Athan Mier gone, Timna gathered her cloak and sat down on the ground, smiling to think that she might see the fulfillment of prophecy and the end of illusion. Hooray!
Definitely sanctimonious.
Sanctimonious and a smidge crazy, but you know.
It's a weird thing when a culture has a tradition that we're all going to kill ourselves at some point in several centuries.
I mean, it is kind of what the Christian religion believes. I mean, it's God's going to come down and do it.
Don't remind me about how... Please don't remind me about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't.
Thanks.
I won't bring it up. I won't say a thing about it.
Thank you.
So interestingly, because you got to imagine, so they have prophecies and everything, but like how many of these people actually sign on to it? So it's sort of like how many people did they force to drink the poison Kool-Aid? Because if you've listened to the Jim Jonesy tapes, which are deeply disturbing, it's sort of like a lot of people weren't on board with it but they had kidnapped them and basically taken them away to South America. So it's just sort of like, yeah, it's creepy. Anything where you have to, be like, okay, we're all gonna, accelerate shuffling off this mortal coil by, drinking poison because it's the end of illusion. I can't imagine everybody was like, oh, okay, that's a great idea.
But also, like, how much more powerful is it in a world where magic is real, rebirth has been proven? Like, there's a bunch of stuff in this world that makes it much easier, I think, to brainwash the masses, because you have all this provable crazy stuff that kind of proves that there is something beyond this life.
True.
Scienceable magic would change the equation radically.
It would be much easier to get comfortable with the idea of death with rebirth guaranteed.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why the Dark One and the power over death that he has is so horrifying, because it's just sort of like, the fact that you could be snatched from death and basically that he has a guaranteed portal to quote-unquote hell or the capacity to create a hell is really awful.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the major religions of the world are focused on what happens after death. They have empirical evidence that it's basically only bad things. Like, that's a very different calculus to go living your life through.
See, I'd be willing to believe that the Dark One only has domain over people who swear to him.
Yeah.
That's why they say deny the Dark One and he can't get you, right? Is that, like, he can't snatch you and put you in a new body or torture your soul. Which brings me back to Rand and Carrie Althor. Mm-hmm. And if that was a real person, or is that evidence that Carrie Althor was actually a dark friend?
I think Rand was in Tel Iran Riyadh, so they weren't real people at all.
Yeah, the third option. Yeah, I like that one best. But it always made me, like, wonder. But yeah, like, that's the only afterlife that they have any empirical evidence of. There's, like, rebirth and literal hell. Like, when you consider how all of our religions are, like, there's this binary of, like, a good or a bad or nothing in rebirth. Like,
there is no concept of a heaven.
Different.
There's no other place that people go to.
Yeah.
There's a purgatory, right? Tel Aviv Riyadh, where people are waiting, but there's no better place to go to. Rand doesn't get up on the mountain and go, why do we live again? So we can earn heaven. No, it's so we can do better this next time around, because the best thing we get is just another life.
There's no higher dimension. There's no next level. There's just, like,
not even any fear of being reborn as an ant or something, like,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's an interesting world building that he chose to go with that.
But specifically about the book, I did I do like to talk about it every once in a while. The Waterway, I think, is the Way of the Leaf with a different name, right? That's
Agreed.
just these are a group of Tuatha'an, Aiel, whatever you want to call them, who split off with the Atha Mier. The sea and went across the sea and maintained that culture, but renamed it the Waterway, and also somehow got this belief that there is, through, I'm assuming, prophecy of some sort, right? Because this is a prophesized event, which is the end of illusion, which is the end of the era when the taint is on the. It's like, isn't that a good thing? Like, why do you want to kill yourself at the end of that?
It's like, almost like how the Ogier are going to open the Book of Translation. They have to leave in order to come again. It's like that, but it's not that. I feel like it's a corruption.
Yeah, that seems like a corruption. What I find interesting is it's sort of like they feel like it's their responsibility to take care of the Athan Mier and save them from themselves. And then in the next book, when the Athan Mier learn what happened, they're like, it was our responsibility to take care of them. So you have these two people have this mutual sense of responsibility, but neither of them really appreciates the other's, like, sanctimonious sense of care. So,
Which is a great mirror of the Gen Aiel and the rest of the Aiel, right? Mm-hmm. Because the Gen Aiel felt like they had a responsibility for these warrior people who they'd created, and the warrior people And shunned, yeah. And the word people felt like they had a responsibility to protect them from the dangers around them. And that's why there were some left.
But also looked down on them. Oh my God, it's literally the same thing.
And one people follow the way of the leaf and the other ones don't, right? Like, yeah, it's absolutely like, it's just Jordan. He loves to mirror the sea folk and the Aiel, like pages of a book around the central cast.
Yeah, it's like, but in here we have the Aiel that shows like, violence and tribalism, and the sea folk shows capitalism. And so it's just sort of...
Which makes the Aiel way much more civilized.
Yes, in a lot of ways.
And I mean, if you think about it, water flows in a way that would lend itself very well to the same analogies as like the way that leaves fall, and like water doesn't push itself uphill. Water goes where it needs to go. Like there's all kinds of ways I can see the analogies working the same way. And it makes sense, right? That like the world is splitting apart. The Aiel are going in every direction. They're interacting with every people. It makes sense that the boat people would have an Aiel contingent with them, and that they would end up in a much more symbiotic relationship than say what happened like with the mainlanders and the Karede, and how the Aiel end up doing this whole like lost tribes of Israel wandering around sort of thing. Like with the boat people, like you either are going to get along or you're going to do a mutual extermination thing. Like you can't have the level of antagonism. And then they get dropped off on this big ass island and left there. Like only the only the Atha Mier are the boat people now. Like the Aiel that have become the Tremalking people, they don't do boats. They just live on Tremalking. Like there is a cultural split still. It's like they were on the boats for the breaking and then got dropped off because they were not boaty.
They even have 12 clans. Well, there's the 12 clans of the Aiel and the 12 main clans of the Athan Mier, the 12 ruling clans or whatever. So there's all of the parallels he gave us.
So that's Winter's Heart. That was a very short POV.
Yeah. So what's happening there is the lighting up across the continents that we were talking about in the end of our last episode, where, you want to imagine lots of little light bulbs lighting up across the continent, but there's only 2. So it's a little underwhelming visually, but like.
And that's the female half is the one that's lighting up there. The male half was the one that we saw. This is why it mirrors the last POV, is that the last one was the male half lighting up. This is the female half lighting up. And they just happen to be in different places across the globe. And sort of we're seeing the POV of the person who's standing there going, what the...
Yeah, and with Barmelon in the last one, he comes across it having already lit up, whereas Timna is seeing it as it lights up?
Mm-hmm.
Or no?
Or she just looks up and it's lighting.
She just looks up. No, she's walking along and sees it. So they actually both are having the same experience. Neither of them actually see it light up. They both come across it having lit up at some point in the past. And I'm going to assume that that's the same moment in time, that both of these POVs are more or less simultaneous.
I think it would be instantly noticeable that it lit up, though, because we're in Winter's Heart, so it's like all of a sudden the sun is out. I would think that would be something you would take notice of.
She does mention it's like a summer sun. So it's probably within minutes or less of when they light up.
You're like, what's that sunrise over there? Because the sun's up ahead.
Yeah. How is there a sun rising in the north? And why does it look like summer?
Somebody turned the light on.
Click.
Weather's been shitty forever. Yeah.
All right, so question. How does the Choedan call turn on? Does it like flicker like a bad fluorescent bulb? Is it like a slow rise, like one of those sodium lamps? Is it like instant on? What do you think?
I like the sodium lamp idea, that there's a little spark in the middle and then it warms up and glows up. I like that.
And the total brightness just gets brighter and brighter and brighter.
Well, eventually it like plateaus.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I never really imagined it. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't see it as on like a light bulb. So I suppose it's like some kind of, gradual, but like gradual quickly, maybe over the course of like a second. So you get some kind of gradation, but it's a quick one.
Follow-up question. What shape are gateways?
I always saw them as square.
Okay.
Thank you. You round gateway people are wrong. So.
Yeah. Back away. Because people are always like, well, what about the rotating? And it's like, well, yeah.
But it's rotating on a line.
Yeah. Into a square. Yeah.
It's going from one dimension to 2 dimensions. Like, my math and science is really shit. Like, I realized I did a terrible math problem in one of my episodes, like with percentages, where I was like, if half of the ideal women, half of the ideal are women, then you would think that 50% of the warriors are women. And then afterwards I lifted over and I'm like, Morgan, your math sucks. But, oh well. But sometimes I can do things,
Dimensions are a thing.
Yeah. Also, it's really hard to stay in as a woman warrior in the ideal society, because if you get married, you have to drop out. The men can stay. If you have a baby, you have to, you can choose to drop out, right? Like
that was before I was listing all the reasons why you would drop out and the notions of opting out versus opting in. Like, I'm like men opt out versus women opting in and, everything. So, and then narrowing down, trying to figure out percentages. Anyway, but yeah, I did bad math and then was like afterwards, like, that's just bad. But it's not my strong suit.
I mean, the math was fine. You divided 100 by 2 and got 50. The math was perfect.
That's the engineer talking. So
listen, sine of theta is theta for small theta. Just go with it. It's fine.
But related to the book, I do feel like I want to just mention that Tremalking is described as being big enough that it doesn't smell like the ocean in the middle of the island. And this is also where like all the good tea comes from. So like, how big is this island? Because I'm thinking it's like Madagascar sized.
Maybe Britain sized. I don't think it's Britain sized.
I don't think it's Britain sized.
Ireland sized, maybe.
Maybe.
I'd say bigger than that.
Because I, for some reason in my mind, I was like Hawaii at first, but like I'm pretty sure that you can always tell that you're on an ocean, like you're near the ocean in Hawaii.
See, I'm thinking like one of the islands in Indonesia, like Papua New Guinea, or like I'm looking at.
Yeah, I've never been somewhere like that. I don't know how far inland you have to go before it doesn't smell like ocean.
That is a good question. Not super far.
Not super far. Does it smell like ocean where you live?
No.
And we're only 60 miles in?
I'm about 40 miles in, and sometimes the afternoon breeze can smell quite oceanic, but that's only very specific times in the late summer.
Like we're about 60 miles in, 65, and it doesn't ever smell like ocean, but sometimes we'll get the seagulls come in when it's real stormy at the coast, and then it like smells real fresh. Mm-hmm. So, but not super oceany.
Yeah, and I also just like don't know like that much about how to grow tea. But it grows really well in China, which is kind of like here. So I'm assuming it's like if it rains, tea is okay. And it doesn't freeze too much, then tea is okay.
Yeah, but don't they grow it up in the mountains where like the weather's a little bit different?
Well, yeah. But like, I just like how far inland do you have to go to make tea? To get the weather to make tea? To get away from the salt to make tea? How much does tea? I guess if you're up in the mountains, you don't have to worry so much about like estuary flooding and like salt in the soil. Even if you are kind of close to the ocean. These are not important questions, but they're also the most important questions.
Sounds like a wiki rabbit hole. My wife.
Yeah, no, I was like, this is gonna be bad.
She asks the question. I'm like, let's see. And the next thing you know, we've spent an hour learning and talking about all kinds of different shit.
Now, in fairness, tea is a subject that is near and dear to the Wheel of Time, but I think we should maybe start on Chapter 4, The Tale of a Doll in Crossroads of Twilight.
Works for me.
Fun. I'll go on a rabbit hole on my own time.
I'm just gonna grab your legs and pull you head first out of the rabbit hole. Nope.
Rude, but fine. I understand. We have a job to do.
And our symbol is a Seanchan helmet face, because this is a Seanchan talking to a Seanchan.
Seanchan.
Malkovich.
Seanchan soldier. I'm so excited for all the world building in this chapter. It's a lot of cool lore drops.
Furyk Karede sat staring at his writing table without seeing the papers and maps spread out in front of him. Both of his oil lamps were lit and sitting on the table, but he no longer had need of them. The sun must be rimming the horizon, yet since waking from a fitful sleep and saying his devotions to the Empress, might she live forever, he had only donned his robe in the dark imperial green that some insisted on calling black, and sat here without moving sense. He had not even shaved. The rain had stopped, and he considered telling his servant Ajimbura to swing a window open for a little fresh air in his room at the Wandering Woman. Clean air might clear his head. But over the last 5 days, there had been lulls in the rain that ended with sudden, drenching downpours, and his bed was located between the windows. He had needed to have his mattress and bedding hung in the kitchen to dry once already. A tiny squeal and a pleased grunt from Ajimbura made him look up to find the wiry little man displaying a limp rat half the size of a cat on the end of his long knife. It was not the first Ajimbura had killed in this room recently. Something Karede believed would not have happened if Satala Anand still owned the inn, though the number of rats in Ebudar seemed to be increasing well in advance of spring. Ajimbura looked like a little wizened rat himself, his grin both satisfied and feral. After more than 300 years under the Empire, the Kesanda Hill tribes were only half civilized and less than half tamed. The man wore his white, streaked, dark red hair in a thick braid that hung to his waist, to make a good trophy if he ever found his way back to those near mountains and fell in one of the endless feuds between families or tribes, and he insisted on drinking from a silver-mounted cup that anyone who looked closely could see was the top of someone's skull. Good God, run-on sentence, Jordan! Fuck you!
I was like, wow, dude, the lung capacity. I'm impressed. You're pacing yourself.
Damn. That was just, I kept waiting for that sentence to end, and it didn't. That was one, I think that whole paragraph was one sentence.
There's 2 sentences.
Okay. There's a period in there somewhere?
Yeah.
I missed it. Oh, yeah,
between feral and
yeah.
after, but yeah.
That's right.
That was a lot. But good job. That'll be a very easy edit.
Some days reading goes well. I don't know. I think I just have to be just tired enough to read slowly enough to not trip over my own tongue or something. I don't know.
So, a couple of fun things to talk about.
Are we talking about the sun rimming the horizon, or?
I'm going to assume there was consent involved. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Boy.
I mean, he does it every morning.
Yeah, well, you know. It's a nice change for everything being fingered, so that's nice.
That's true.
Good God.
That's true.
Okay, can we?
We'll change of pace.
You're killing me here.
Sorry. Anyway.
So they're in the Wandering Woman, our good old setting. Did a bunch of stuff. It's kind of like, I feel like it's a set that Jordan loves to just use over and over and over again. It's his favorite inn in Ebudar. And he's just like, where am I going to have this thing? The Wandering Woman. Here we go.
He built it in really thorough detail. He wasn't going to waste that.
No, not. And all the innkeepers and everything and the way it got passed down. And yeah.
Well, he specified in the last book that all the Seanchan officers were specifically stationed there because Soreth wanted them close. And like when Egyanan showed up, she ended up kicking people out to stay there. So it makes sense that it's in there. But anybody find it interesting that it's like this is the first and basically only instance we really get of actual like religious expression in the Wheel of Time is that he says devotions to he's praying to a person, and they don't specifically make it sound like the Empress is a god beyond the fact that they want her to live forever. But that's literally like the only sort of prayer beyond like a prayer of like, gee, I hope this is, like light, let it this work out okay or whatever. It's the sort of basic like fingers crossed sort of prayer. I thought that interesting.
Yeah, the deification of the Empress or Emperor, whoever's sitting on the crystal throne, is very, very intense. And we even see it at the end with Mylan, the former Aes Sedai, who's now a Damani, being as devoted to Tuon as if she was the Empress already. Like, that level of devotion is just the gold standard. And yeah, you're right. It is the closest thing we get to religion outside of people who worship the Dark One, which is a whole other category.
Well, and I think Crystal Throne compulsion, just going to bring that up there. The Crystal Throne is a compulsion device. It's
specifically says in the companion that it's called a...
It's a Terran Grial, but they don't give it a name. They just say it's a Terran Grial.
That it makes you feel awe. It doesn't say that it's compulsion, that it makes you feel awe, which would open wanting to do whatever someone tells you. Or...
But I have a long ongoing headcanon that it actually is a compulsion device that basically, when you're sitting on it, whatever you say is compulsion to whoever hears you, which is why the Empress mostly uses sign language to communicate. And that's why all the people have speakers.
It's a great headcanon. I honestly, to completely go off the site, a Radius headcanon, the last episode I got to listen to about the Horn of Valir, because I hate the Horn of Valir in general because it's so dumb. I really appreciate it. The idea of it being like a physical manifestation of some object that somebody thought of and, you know, like, well, we need something, okay, a horn or whatever, and then it just somehow got kicked out of Tel Iran Riyadh. I really, like, to have some reason for it to exist, thumbs up. Like, anyway, back to this.
Did I come up with that? I thought Seth came up with that.
I thought you came up with it.
You came up with that.
Just listened to it yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
See,
that was your idea.
People know more about us than we know ourselves. This is the weirdness of being a podcaster. But cool, yay! I'm glad I could patch that hole in the headcanon.
As well as it can be patched. I still think it's dumb. But
yeah.
Anyway,
we've got something. I want to point out that the dark imperial green we've been. I don't know if we've had the black turned into green in our POVs yet. In terms of the Seanchan, in terms of a Seanchan actually describing the outfit, because they're always described from Matt's perspective, right? And he says it's black. And so we think it's black. And now here we're getting clued into the fact through a Seanchan's eyes that not only is there a religious devotion to the Empress, even in his most innermost thoughts, but it's actually green.
In fact, yeah, the fact that it's green is hinted to in the subtext of their conversation and kind of twists the whole story about what's exactly going on with this extortion scheme, and what it really is, which is kind of cool.
Real world fact, the dark green that some insisted on calling black sounds like Charleston green, a paint color commonly used in Charleston, South Carolina, where Robert Jordan lived.
Oh my God!
Thank you, Encyclopedia Watt, for pulling that fact out. Although I think I've heard that in a few places. I think it's in the companion as well. So I wanted to, Ajimbura is this representation of a native people that have existed in the backwaters of Seanchan that have only recently been conquered by the Empire, that have this totally separate, distinct, unique culture that seems to include some sort of servitude for certain people, right? Like there's something in, and also, you know, I was just listening to Towers of Midnight, and there's another one of these people from Ajimbura's tribe serving another Seanchan, and he's sort of achieved it in the same way. And so there's apparently this culture of going out there and finding someone to serve from that tribe.
Did Brandon elaborate on why that's happening?
There wasn't really anything more in there other than like, oh yeah, that's another one of those Ajimbura guys. You know, that was about as far as I got. So Yeah, I found it really interesting because it's sort of like they talk about constant rebellions, but, you know, it's sort of like they've been on, you know, Arthur Hawkwing's armies have been on the continent for 1,000 years. And so it's taken 700 of them. I mean, he doesn't say that this is the last of the native tribes that they conquered, but it's taken at least 700 for these to be conquered. And they still have most of their culture. It hasn't been eradicated, and it doesn't seem to be the Seanchan way to eradicate people's culture. So I don't know. It's interesting to look at that.
It was making me think of like the Gauls and the Celts on the edge of the Roman Empire, especially because he's described as having dark red hair. And I'm just like, red hair is always an interesting feature, both in the real world and in Wheel of Time. And so it made me think, like, maybe these are, you know, people from Cymru, right? Like, still doing their thing out on the edge of the empire, but also, like, for whatever reason, sending their mercenary warriors in to participate in whatever the latest legionary governor is doing. Like, I don't know.
Well, and what about, like, he'll eat anything but lizards? But yeah, it's like, what? Why that? Why is that just a religious thing? Is he trying to is he making that connection between those two? Like what, or is he just saying like, you know, a lot of people have weird religious dietary restrictions. This one feels weird enough. I'll throw that one in there.
Maybe the lizards in the mountains are poisonous, and so, or there's a prone to be poisonous, so if they just don't because of
the risk of yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or it's just superstition, because he definitely portrays them as being that very, like, quote unquote primitive, savage, uncivilized. Like, that's very much how the Empire sees them. And like, they still have these weird traditions, and his hair needs to be like a good trophy. And there's these endless wars. And there's just this, like, he has no curiosity about it. It might just be a superstition at all.
Yeah, it's really interesting to kind of just give us that, the Seanchan inner narratives that we've had always makes it sound like they think that their country is hot shit or their empire is hot shit and has its shit squared away. But then it's like anytime we dig deep, everything seems to indicate that that's not the case at all. They're constantly struggling to even keep what they have conquered or civilized under control, because there's constant pushback and rebellions, presumably by places that they've conquered, and then they still haven't even managed to conquer everything because it's such a huge area.
I mean, these could be like, the Vandals, right? Like the original Vandals that give us the freaking root for vandalism, because they're just so freaking troublesome that we're going to create a whole word to remember how freaking annoying they were. Like, that could be these guys.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then he has a cup made out of someone's skull, which is just the most boss move. It's so intimidating, and it's just a normal thing in his culture. And Karede, who is one of the most badass people, has to steel himself to use it. And like, this is Ajimbura's regular cup. He's so cool.
But then what I love is then how it really terrifies more later.
Yeah.
When Karede drinks out of it kind of inadvertently, because he's kind of just shell shocked that he's got a seeker in his house, and he's like, oh, I'll reach for a cup, and he's like, oh, I'm drinking out of the skull. Fuck it.
Well, he's like, he's like, I would never drink out of that. Oh, you just insulted my unit? Yeah. I'm gonna drink out of this while not breaking eye contact.
Right.
Like, it's amazing how he goes from reluctant to absolutely steely, just like intimidation, and I love him for it.
And it feels like he's more put off because he knows that the dude never washes it.
There is that too, yeah. It's like an antiseptic, but is it hygienic?
I love Karede. One of the things that I like about this chapter is it's sort of like all of the Seanchan POVs that we've gotten before have been from the point of views of people who have something to lose. And so getting the point of view of someone who is a slave and a conversation between two slaves, but uniquely two slaves with power, is so interesting. And it puts such an interesting spin on the culture and the point of view of people who cannot change their circumstances, have power over much higher people, and then they're in this power struggle with each other because the seeker comes in so puffed up with his own sense of being able to frighten everyone, and then deals with this dude who is absolutely not scared of him.
Right. A badass in his own right, even more so.
Yeah, and frightens him in turn. And because I don't like the Seeker, because he's basically, the Seanchan's version of a QAnon asshole, I like seeing him intimidated because I like Karede an awful lot. It's just for a Seanchan, I find Karede quite likable. And so it's just sort of, I love this whole layout. It's very lovely because I think the Seeker's an asshat, so.
But he's an interesting asshat.
And remember, the Seeker he's a reoccurring character from the Shadow Rising, right? He's the one who attacks Julian, and Tom Aginan knocks him unconscious and drags him out because he was questioning her. So he's the guy who got hit over the head and dragged out behind the.
Yeah, he's trailing Agianan because he suspects she's not killing Suldam, which means he ends up spying on Elaine and Nynaeve and Tom and Julian and Doman. He gets knocked out there.
Eggiana gets home from the Garden of Silver Blazes where she's interacting with Florin Gelb, and he's waiting in her house, and then has a conversation with her where he basically intimates to her that she should probably kill any Soldan that she finds. And you get kind of this interaction where you get some idea of the Seekers and everything, and then get her refreshingly rebellious thoughts where she's kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to let this dude kill me, and then, yeah, see his whole thing. And now you finally get the spinning out of exactly what Captain Crazy Pants here has been thinking this whole time. And so it's very interesting.
And he showed up recently, just in last book, by intimidating Bethaman into trying to get to Eggiana, because he will not let this nonsense brainworm he has go, because he is definitely a QAnon academic, shall we say?
Something.
Yeah, these are Elida levels of paranoia and misinformation and like, I'm going to take the facts that I have, which are incomplete, and come up with a conclusion which is wrong and act on it in a way that's totally counterproductive.
It's still more logical than Gawain, though.
Well, fuck yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like taking cuckoo stuff and connecting lines with it, some manner of logic, rather than just making crazy conclusions based on impulsive emotional decisions. So
yeah, but that logic is like, this person knows that person, therefore, and it's like it's talk show radio, jock radio connection stuff, right? Like, Hunter Biden knows these people, therefore.
It's like he thinks there's a pizza restaurant in the basement of the Terrace and Palace running a pedophile ring out of. Yeah, I know. It's like,
yeah, you can tell because they order fish in the kitchen, which is really unusual in a city that has a giant port. Which
is why I love the scene when Karede walks into the camp and he's like, I need to see Tom Maryland, the mastermind of this whole plot. And everyone's like, what? You mean Matt? And then he's like,
no, I mean Tom. And they're like, well, we can get you Tom, but we're pretty sure you want Matt.
and then the whole thing is like broken down to him, and he's just sitting there like his mind exploding as 2-1's like, all right, take me home.
Right, because he is the only information he has is all of the suppositions laid out here,
right,
which put Matt as the absolute least important, most tag along thing. Like, he's barely above Noel in terms of importance.
He was the informer. He slept with 2-1 to get the information. He's just a toy boy.
Yeah, he's Tylen's fuckboy. You know, he's basically nothing but, a penis that she rides on, and that's it.
And a mouth. That can talk.
Yeah,
and
okay, yeah.
Suck on other things.
Yes.
Yeah, but not actually someone capable of nuance, probably not very intelligent, only educated enough to entertain a queen. Yeah, but not worth anything. So.
The toy.
Yeah, so it has to be Tom. It has to be the old man, because of course the old man with the impressive mustaches has the most brains.
With the connection to Tarvalin and Camelin, and yeah.
And the implication that Tarvalin knows who to kidnap, and that they wouldn't kill her, but that they would kidnap her. The implication that Tarvalin knows anything. Tarvalin is over here debating if the Seanchan are real.
Well, in fairness, they have no reason to know that the Aes Sedai are as staggeringly incompetent as they are, because they're far more incompetent than they have any right to be. No one has any right to be.
They give them so much credit.
Well, yeah, it's just like here. Yeah. The so-called Aes Sedai revealed their unknown weapon only a few leagues from where he sat.
Yes, the exploding gateway.
The exploding mistake that Elaine made when she was trying to unravel and didn't know what the fuck she was doing, and they barely survived, and they can never duplicate again. And the Seanchan have assumed this is just a regular weapon all Aes Sedai can just throw off at a whim, and you're just like...
Which is, I'm sure, Jordan's expression, having been in the military, of, what people in military intelligence like to do with the information that they get. It's almost like he's making fun of them, which is fun.
This is giving me major CIA seeking a truth serum in the Cold War because the Russians are ahead of us vibes. It's totally.
And I mean, it's not fair for them to assume that the Aes Sedai would actually have some manner of competency.
In their stories, they are monsters of manipulation.
Yeah, and that makes sense because, the way that Aes Sedai evolved on the Seanchan continent was completely different from how they evolved on Ranlan's continent. They evolved into little fiefdoms where they used their power to enrich themselves and be powerful. And so it's sort of like, it makes sense they see them as, monsters and bad people, but it's sort of like that also when you're planning on doing evil and you're competent at it, those people tend to be competent. And so, they have this idea of them being competent in evil. And instead, it tends to be people who want to do well don't work together as well because they can't decide what's for the best. And they fight together. And then the people who aren't good also try to make them not function well. And so they're much less competent. Shitty people are always more competent, which is sad, but it's partly because they're willing to be ruthless. So
why are people?
I know, right?
That's why you always want a leader who doesn't want to lead.
Mm-hmm. Perrin!
Next thing I've got is we got a timestamp. Is 9 nights past is when Tuon was kidnapped. So that sort of our time stamps up our timeline as to where exactly we are. Which means I think this actually does put us... Oh, do we remember how many days since the kidnapping until... They realize that the cleansing is happening, right? That's way more than 9 days after they leave.
Yeah. They're on the road well into their trip when I'm pretty sure that we see Karede and whatever the Sul'dam's name is talking about, I don't know what's going on with the North. It's a thing. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that they're well into their camping trip.
So in a lot of ways, we've jumped back in time because we've seen in other chapters in this book where they've seen the power start being used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it started in the previous chapter.
Right.
Where
and this is before that. Yeah, we're jumping back.
I said, we need to get out of here, Matt. I just wanted to point out a couple of things because he has real snarky inner narrative a little bit. As snarky as he gets because he's so stoic about members of the blood.
He's very stoic.
He's talking about how he had been raised to Banner General because he had some small successes against the battles in Book 8. And so they assume that because he fought and commanded against men who could channel, that he might actually have some wisdom to share about fighting against Marath the Manny. And it's obvious in the subtext of that he thinks they're fucking stupid for thinking that.
Right.
Yep.
He's like, I succeeded in not getting blown up. In what way does that give me any sort of authority of where to point the cannons?
Yeah, he commanded a successful retreat, and part of the reason he did that is because he killed one of the dudes. One of the dudes was like, I commanded to go forward. He's like, you did what? And then stabbed him in the throat, basically, and pulled everybody back.
He knew to leave the fight, and these guys are asking him to help them get into a fight. And he's like, my advice is don't.
Yeah, and then, so... He's talking about all the stuff on his table with requisitions and forces, and he's like, his comments on the forces arrayed against them in Ilion had been solicited by 4 lords and 3 ladies, and on the special Aiel problem by 6 ladies and 5 lords.
I don't like that phrasing. I don't like that phrasing.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that didn't come across
right. The special Aiel problem? Excuse me?
So, sorry. Words, context, Jordan. They matter. Sorry. But those questions would be decided elsewhere, very likely already had been decided. His observations would only be used in the infighting over who controlled what in the return. So he's like, you don't even want my opinions to decide policy. You basically want talking points to use what I have to tell you so you guys can, fuck each other over and, maneuver for power. So it's almost like he resents the fact that he's gotten this increase in power because he's being dicked around by all of these higher ups. And so he's got this total snarky inner narrative about the blood. And I just appreciate it because it's not super snark because he is so stoic, and also because he's a slave. It's like he's not allowed to think really shitty thoughts about them. So everything for him is subtext, and it's just really brilliantly written. And I really appreciate it. So,
yeah. Also, speaking of subtext, the foreshadowing. This is the attack on Tar Valon getting planned. We get multiple references to it. It's very clear that the Seanchan are intending something. He's giving us as clear a message as Egwene's visions about how the Seanchan are going to attack. He's like, here you go. I'm doing it. Just so you know, that's coming up. Booker 3 from now. I'm doing it. I'm throwing these 2 things together. It's coming. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he gets more subtle with his foreshadowing and a lot of stuff in this book, too. Like, he sprinkles it through. He's more blatant about it in a lot of things earlier in the book, so it's things where on multiple rereads you see all kinds of stuff in this book and you're like, holy shit, like...
Well, and a lot of it's just because you don't have a lot of information on the Seanchan culture, so you have to put you have to make bigger jumps, I think, in some of these Seanchan POV.
That's what his capacity for POV is just like to die for.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a good example of that, too. Because you get the sense of reverence, that he has a very real reverence, but also his very real, like, cynical assessment of the nonsense. Like, so much insight.
And yeah, but because he's a slave and the conditioning he has, he can't think to himself, this is stupid, this is anything. So it's all just like very below the surface of this stoic person. And it's just, yeah, I love this book because there's a number of minor point of views that he develops a lot of time to. And so, yeah, people wanting a narrative are like, why are we wasting this time with this? And I'm like, give me more. So.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of someone working in a big corporation who doesn't agree with like the direction the CEOs are taking it. They're like, what can I do? I'm just like, I crunch these numbers. I don't have a choice in the direction of the company, but I just do my best to like keep people alive. And now she's gone. Crap. Like,
right. Because we get a lot of interesting insight into who the Death Watch guards are, specifically in this chapter. We get that their first duty is to protect the imperial family. Their second duty is to support the military. And that they've been doing this with no disloyalty ever since the first death of a Pandrag. They've been sworn to protect his family.
Ever since someone sat on the crystal throne and swore them to duty, they've never had a betrayal. Sounds like compulsion to me.
But it's like, it seems like betrayal is something that's not uncommon in other situations, so it almost seems like when you have slaves and you give them power over people, but it's like they can never stop being slaves, that's an interesting way to get loyalty. Because it's like when you can only be kicked down, but you cannot go up. There's no way to gain any further power because you're a slave, but you have a power where you can, control the lives of... What a way to ensure loyalty, because you have such an interesting position where your life is very good as a slave in its own way that you have. I think that that's such an interesting way for powerful slaves, and the whole concept of that.
I mean, isn't that kind of like what the Praetorian Guard in the Roman Empire were supposed to be, except that they kept actually taking power and killing their emperors?
So my knowledge of history that way is shamefully inept because I'm a lazy English major who only wants to live in fiction. So
I know it only from podcast listening. So I only know it from podcast listening, but I'm pretty sure that that's supposed to be the dynamic with the Praetorian Guard, but they keep realizing that they have the power to kill the emperor and using it.
Okay, well then obviously it's because they've been bound to the crystal throne.
Basically, yes. I guess I'm using my podcast education to support Seth's headcanon.
Okay.
But
well,
I literally know that from listening to podcasts while shelving books at a library several years ago. So, do not trust that.
And you can fudge it a little bit and say, it's induced awe, and therefore they listen, they actually obey it. You can say it's, not straight compulsion, that it's just, a sense of awe combined with a verbal command is very, makes it hard not to obey, because it's very much like a religious experience. But
that's true. Awe is an incredible motivator.
Right. So if you just want to say all it does is create awe, you can say, well, it's like this compulsion super light of just almost like religious indoctrination, just with an added artificial sense of awe.
Okay.
Or you can say it's totally compulsion, which I do.
I mean, either it's just dropping a little bit of ecstasy in everyone's Kool-Aid, Flavor Aid, or it's full on truth serum that the Soviets definitely invented.
I just like granting agency to people and thinking about why they would have agency, and also just in a situation, but at the same time, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, these people will kill themselves if they're told to. That seems like a little much, because the power to want to survive is a lot. Self-survival, but I don't know if you're drilled from boyhood, I don't know, but he was 15. That's quite old enough to start thinking your own thoughts. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. My personal jury is out.
And then that matches with my Gawain compulsion theory, that he's been compelled by Messa to obey the Emerlin, which is why he has to obey Elida up until he finds out that Egwene is the Emerlin seat, and then he can go and obey her. And that's why he can't get to Camelin.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Taking away of agency.
I do. I take away the agency of some of these characters. When they do dumb things, I like to take away their agency, because I don't like it when they do dumb things.
So every cranny in the city is being searched, and I think someone in Discord pointed out that this is probably what the search at the circus was about the horses.
Oh, yeah.
Being searched on some pretext or other. That probably was a looking for Tuon thing, and because they don't know what they're looking for, they think they're checking the horse lines. They absolutely miss.
Yeah, what a stupid thing. It's like, look for something. What?
Something suspicious. Just terrorize the locals until you find something. You mean like this gold? Sure. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, if I'm digging half the time, I can't find it even if I know what I'm looking for, because my eyes pass over it and I'm just like, don't even see it.
Oh my god, right?
Trying to find the last edge piece in the box of puzzle pieces. And be like, I went through all of them twice and I still didn't find it. And then the seeker comes in. And I love it, because it's like, it's rude, but it says seekers for truth did not have to knock, and killing them was frowned upon. Which is...
I love that it's frowned upon.
It's like, for anybody else, it's absolutely, like, unforgivable, will probably earn you the most horrible death ever, but if you're a Deathswath guard, it's just frowned upon, and you should probably have a real good reason for doing it.
Like, that was your third one this year, man. You gotta slow down.
If you do it again, you're gonna get a write-up. This is a verbal warning, but it's a written verbal warning, because we need to have written proof that we gave you a verbal warning.
Which sort of tells you the relative power positions, right? They might both be slaves, but I get the feeling like the Seeker for Truth is like a cop, and the Deathwatch Guard is like the Secret Service.
Absolutely. Yes. One is much more highly trained and rarefied than the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which also explains why you've got this basically sort of dumb street cop being like, I've got this theory. And the Secret Service guy being like, okay, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Like, and why he sort of punishes him for coming in flashing his badge. He's like, okay, yeah, you didn't have to flash your badge in my face. Like, that was unnecessary. You could have just knocked, and you didn't have to barge in here, flashing your big badge around like you're some big shot. No, I don't think so. Sit your ass down. I'm going to drink out of this skull and terrify you, and settle down. Tell me what you know. One
of the things I love is the fact that the servant Ajimbura doesn't like it either, and so doesn't obey the secret first, which is a big no-no. And you get that even in their tribes, everybody do a seeker's work was law. Well, perhaps not in some of the more remote hill forts, not if they believed no one knew the seeker was there. And so it's like they only obey the rules if there will be consequences, and if not, they're going to shank the seeker and be like, we didn't see anybody, and I just really appreciate that.
I love that whole aesthetic, the whole vibe. It's just like, yeah, you get those Imperial bastards.
Yeah. I really like it, because it's like all the heads that we've been in before, like the fear of this guy has been so palpable. And so being in the heads of people who aren't impressed by him is just, I love it, because I don't like this guy. I don't like him. So,
because he kind of terrorized Teginen for a while there, in the Shadow Rising, and Benjamin as well, and
he's still on her tail. He is the entire reason that she has to listen to Matt, is because she's afraid of this asshole.
Right.
Yeah, he has hardcore sanctimonious cop vibes, and when you have sanctimonious cop combined with like Choedan and shit, it's just like, no, I don't like him. So
yeah, no, it's a bad combo. And then he goes to like a very serious like Navy SEAL Secret Service guy and is like, listen to this crazy theory, and dude's just like, I have to do a threat assessment, but also, oh my god, so much work just to listen to. I also love how Ajimbura, like, absolutely goes around the door and just listens. And Karede knows that and doesn't even fight it, doesn't even bother with, like, he's just like, no, that is my shadow. He's completely loyal. And
I wouldn't have told him anything anyway.
Concern. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, he, like, served him for 20 years and decided not to kill him. He's like, I almost killed him 3 times, and it's like, he made the decision not to, and at this point, he just picks his battles. He's like, not worth fighting.
It feels like a warder Aes Sedai thing. It gives me that new spring. Moraine decides that she wants a warder thing. But it's like, in this case, the warder decided he was going to be the warder and like just attached himself to the Aes Sedai. But it's that kind of relationship.
Yeah, I really like it.
What do you think Ajimbura is getting out of it? Just protection in modern society? Like, why do you think he's doing this?
I think there's some kind of honor thing to do with it. I feel like there's some sort of internal to the Hill Tribes politics where it's like you go out and you like do your service serving one of these honorable guys and you come back with cool stories and honor and that, like, or maybe it's some sort of like you fucked up internally, so we're going to cast you out. And like, if you can survive serving a Death Watch guard for 30 years, we might consider letting you back or something.
Yeah, truthless.
Maybe he's got a crush.
I mean,
he's like, God, you're strapping. I like you in that arm. I follow you around.
Daddy Karede.
Yeah, Daddy Karede.
I'll eat that lizard.
Whoa!
Technically, it's a skink.
Whoa!
Doesn't have legs.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
I think we broke a radio.
With that, we're gonna break for ads.
Nice way to build that in.
Why do you guys have me on?
Why don't we have you on every week? That's the real question.
Yeah, very much.
Oh boy. Okay. They sort of go back and forth and talk a little bit, and then the Seeker does the classic I'm a bad guy doing an overt interrogation technique of bringing up the dead son of a military man. Asshole.
And how your wife would have been very proud. And it's like, okay, gloves off. Fuck you. Because it really does piss Karede off. But we learn a bit about Karede. We learn that his wife is dead and that one of his sons has fallen in the line of military service and the other 2 are sworn into the same military unit order thingamajiggy Death Watch guards as he is. So his whole family is either dead or enslaved to a violent, gruesome end. Which is cool and totally off limits, which is like more, what are you doing? What are you're trying to get a rise out of him?
Well, I think what he's also trying to do, and maybe really clumsily, is basically say, like, I know you're loyal to Choedan, and that's why I'm coming to you with this. Because I know you are personally loyal to this, the Empress. Well, not the Empress, but
like you've sacrificed
the daughter of the Nine Moons. You sacrificed everything, right? Yeah, like I see how much you sacrificed, and yet you kept that doll, right? Like that. I know you're loyal, which is why I'm coming to you with this crazy story because I think you are the person who can help me rescue Choedan, and you won't betray me because like everybody else does, because there's fucking cameras everywhere, like it's a very paranoid, it's a very paranoid, like, QAnon type thing to be like, you're the only one I can trust because you have this personal loyalty to the daughter of the Nine Moons and we can use you and I can't trust anybody else.
Well, they're engaged in this chess match of who can intimidate whom. So it's
dick
like
measuring
this
contest.
This is a dick measuring contest, and Karede made the first. Moore made the first sally by coming into his room without knocking, which for Karede, because of his position, is sort of like technically he doesn't have to, but it's real rude. And then Moore makes a comment about the papers on his desk and says something about, are you involved in the thing about Tarvalin? And he's like, you got to ask the dude who's actually involved, and says something about loyalty to the crystal throne is precious about the breath of life. Follow closely by knowing when to keep silent. The more who speak of a thing, the more who will learn of it, who should not speak. And then under the spoken words, it's no one short of the imperial family rebuked a speaker or whatever hand guided him. And so he just basically is like, you should know when to shut up. And so makes the first kind of, pops him in the face. And at that point, he makes the comment about his family as a way to try to like gain the power back in the interview. And then they start doing this counterpoint of who can control this situation. And it's like beautiful. Oh, wait, first the seeker sits behind him. And Karede is like, okay, I can turn around and move, or I can just sit here and look at him out of the corner of my eye and not let him control this. Okay. And then he talks about his family. And the seeker, or Karede's response to that is to ask him his name. So I just love this, like, jockeying for control that they have.
I miss that they basically have the whole conversation with Karede with his back turned to the other guy. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's definitely two different lawmen from different jurisdictions, like trying to stake their own fiefdom, draw that line in the sand. And yeah, we've all seen this scene in a million movies.
Yeah, and one of them trying to like push around and intimidate the other one, and the other one being like, who do you think you are? So yeah, it's really lovely. And so, but he forces him to basically give his name, or puts him in a position where he feels like, he should give his name. And then Fury Karede is like, call me Fury. Basically, let's be on a first name basis. We're both slaves here. Like, don't act like you're my superior. Don't act like you have any kind of power in this situation.
Which is because we've seen the Seeker interview a bunch of other people, and he never gives his name. He's just known as the Seeker for many, many books. And then he's forced to give his name here. Like that, we've never seen that before. So yeah, it's clear that he's dealing with a different level of power, a different level of social obligation.
And the way that he gives his name is also telling the fact that he is insecurely trying to jockey for position with someone who is actually his superior, because he gives the name Moore, Almurat Moore, because Moore is his like family name. It's the name that says, this is my heritage. And Furyk is like, I'm not giving you that name because first of all, I don't know what it is for me. But second of all, that's just a silly affectation and a power move. Let's be real. We're both just slaves here.
Yeah, we're all folks. Yeah.
You're not noble, despite taking the noble's last name. That's just your owner.
Yeah. No
you're your descendant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love also the line, men who tried to stand on their forebears' shoulders rather than their own feet often found themselves shorter by a head. I feel like that goes right up there with on the heights, the paths are paved with daggers for just pithy. This is how Seanchan is,
Yeah, and then he just calls him out. It's like, what do you want? You're not here to discuss my family, because he knows that, he brought that up to try to poke him or shift him, because he wouldn't have done it so soon if there were actually any issues. And it's like from the corner of his eye, he can see the struggle on his face because he knows he lost control of the interview. And it's like, as he might have expected, flashing his plaque as though a Death Watch guard were not ready to thrust a dagger into his own heart on command. Like, what the fuck did you expect, asshat? So... And then he starts to tell him his Captain Crazy Pants story, which says that this is this rumor that, it's even hard to kind of parse out, because, some of it is what's actually happening in the Terrasen Palace because of the kidnapping. But then there's also this thing about, somebody who looks like Tuon extorting merchants, and it's all, mixed together, and I want to know what you guys think about it.
Well, I think there are facts, right? There are facts in this story that you can see and have obviously happened, because those things happened, and we've seen them in the rest of the book. But the story he puts together is obviously ridiculous. But it's what happens when you see, a couple of parts of an elephant and don't realize what the whole animal looks like, and then you try and draw a whole animal and it comes out looking like some sort of tentacle monster because all you saw was the trunk. And I feel like that's really what's going on here. And Furyk, you've got this crazy story that's got facts in it. And what Karede does is he puts those facts together and goes, okay, at the very least, I know there's some girl out there that looks like Tuon with her accent. That's hard for locals to make up. We have a lead. I'm going to get my people together and go chase that lead.
Yeah, so he starts out telling them about this rumor that's going around where they mention Tuon's description accurately and that she has a Shandar accent. She's attempting to extort, or has been extorting, gold and jewelry from merchants, that her title has been mentioned, that no one can recall hearing the rumor before the night after Tylan's murder was discovered. It's like he chose the least unpleasant event to fix to the time.
A woman's head was ripped off, and that's the least unpleasant event?
Yeah. And
Yikes.
he knows that the rumor has passed to the people, and so it's sort of like all of the subtext, and it's like hard to understand all of the subtext because it's hard to understand like exactly how insane the Seanchan people are, but it's just sort of like, so somebody's either it sounds like it's because somebody's trying to get Choedan killed, but are they really? And so they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on in the palace. Like, how are they taking this kidnapping?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that question in particular, because he says, how does the Terrasin Palace take recent events? There would be listeners among the servants, likely among even Ebudari servants by now, and what the listeners heard soon passed to the seekers.
So, how I've always interpreted this is that Semirog is doing some stuff. I've always seen Semirog's fingerprints on this situation. Tuon vanishes. Semirog knows that happened. She doesn't know how or why, but she knows that it happened. She goes on retreat, right? She drops her Anath disguise and she goes and does it. I think she sets up this rumor thing to just basically be a smoke and mirrors, butter on the cat's paws, kind of tie up the Seanchan justice system, such as it is, goes over to Shandar and murders everyone. And then by the time she comes back, Tuon is now being looked for by an army of Seanchan that she has triggered with this, because this rumor thing of a girl extorting jewelry with the very specific Deathwatch guards and the specific accent, like that doesn't make sense to me with what's actually happening. It has always to me seemed like Semirog decided, oh, I guess I got to pull the pin on that plan. I guess we're doing this now because for whatever fucking reason, Tuon's gone.
Yeah, like she can't rule through her anymore, so she goes back to Chandra. She's taken to seclusion, so she's back on the Seanchan, wiping out the Imperial family right now, and then presumably trying to find Tuon, or sending people to find Tuon. So she's basically enraging the Seanchan, and then they're going to get to the point where they're offering a reward. They're getting them just whipped up into a fury so that if anybody finds Tuon, she'll get killed, and at that point, she'll have Suroth is the one that she wants to put on the throne at that point. And so she figures that that's her best plan with Tuon being gone.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, Sora's upset, and she's killing a seeker every day, and she finally decided it's probably not good because she's not going to get her back. It's been like 9 days.
Yeah.
She threw a double handful of seekers, and I was like, oh, these are actually kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Takes a while to train them. And it just says, he never specifically says that the Death Watch guards are there. There's nothing in anything that Moore says, but Karede reads it, that the Death Watch guards are mentioned, because he gets really mad about it and stands up and insists, hey, pour us a drink.
Well, the reason that he thinks Death Watch guards are implied is that this rumor about this girl with the Seanchan accent and exactly looks like Tuon, no one locally would know those details about Tuon, who Tuon was, and how to make up the accent. So therefore, he's like, well, and it can't be real, right? So therefore, it must be planted by somebody, so it must be an inside job. Is basically, I think that's the conclusion he's come to, is basically saying, this is an inside job, and Karede is going, why do you come to me if you think it's an inside job? Because I'm on the inside. Like, wouldn't you think I would be the part of that?
Yeah, he's basically like, if you think that we're involved in this, why did you even come to me? And then he starts spinning out his real Captain Crazy Pants thing about the whole thing with Matt and Tom and everything. And he his like crowning thing about why he thinks that it's actually an inside job. And I think the point that he's making is that there is no, there's been no extortion. It's just the rumor is that it must be Seanchan who made the rumor, is the fact that he points at the armor and says most locals refer to this as black, but somebody's been saying it's been green and red armor. So because it's being passed around as that it's in green and red armor, he knows that the original source of the rumor is Seanchan. But then it's like they don't know what is the end point, because Choedan's disappeared like 3 times before on purpose, to the point of like they almost had a funeral for her before she popped back up, because they have, in their game of houses, makes the Kyrian and looks straightforward.
In a lot of ways, there's a lot of more straightforward murder in the Seanchan game of houses, which makes it a little more straightforward because you just got to go into hiding if you think someone's going to kill you. And so, I feel like murder is the goal.
Yeah, there's a lot of stabbing and poison and just general death dealing. Like, murder in the game of houses in Kyrian was like a new thing in the Great Hunt, where Huron is telling Rand, I've heard that people are getting killed now, and that was, surprising.
It's always been that way in Seanchan.
Whereas Choedan just grew up, assuming that, most of her siblings were going to kill her or she was going to kill them. That, there was no growing up with siblings because they were just competition.
There was no growing up with safety. Like we get in the description here about the little PowerPoint dossier file about Karede. We get that he survived the first assassination attempt on her life in her first year of life. She was an infant the first time that grown-ass men died protecting her. She's never known safety. And he's been there the whole time. That's the point of that story is to tell us about the literal tale of the doll. But his career has in so many ways been watching over this one very specific person, watching her grow up. I think maybe you're right, Seth, that there is a bit of she is in some ways the doll because she is this precious item that has to be protected and cared for and looked for, and now she's lost. And I mean, yeah, she's tiny, both in terms of age and stature when compared to Karede.
Yeah, it's her charming mother and her encouraging all of her children to try to murder each other because the strong survive. No, the ruthless and shitty survive.
Yeah, well, that's how you keep ruthless and shitty rulers in power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it works.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't sure how much of this backstory you wanted to get into. It's pretty detailed. It's one long paragraph.
It's up to you guys. It exhausts me. So
just the highlights, I think. I mean, mainly that he was assigned to come along with Turak, and that he was assigned to come over and watch for ambition among the blood, right? That's why he was sent, which we see even in Great Hunt with Suroth, right? Just knowing that the Death Watch guards are there to watch over the Seanchan and keep them in line. So we know that he was assigned to Turak, so he's been here since the beginning. His mission was derailed by Rand killing him. That's kind of cool. And then the story of the doll is it's a very basic, here's why he cares about her for silly emotional reasons. And for some reason, he's been allowed to have this attachment to her, even though it's not really professional of him. And so we know he's a good guy. And when he shows up, Matt can trust him implicitly. I think that's why we have the story.
Sorry, that wasn't the part that exhausts me. It's Moore's tangled thoughts. Those exhaust me.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the PowerPoint backstory.
Oh, no, that doesn't exhaust me. I think it's nice. I like seeing, him being humanized. It's almost like, he has 3 sons. He doesn't have a daughter. He finds her bravery really appealing. And she's sweet. When kids do stuff like that, that's super sweet. It makes him very human and, shows that he's a decent person, for what he is. He's a decent person, and so it's just sort of, I don't know. I like his character a lot.
Yeah.
And I love the way that Choedan hands him the doll, too. It also builds her character quite a bit, right? Where he hands her the doll, says, this is to protect you. She can't really protect you. You know, of course, she's just a doll, right? Like, this is this little girl being like, she's just a doll. She can't actually protect you. But, you know, if you speak my name and I'm alive, if I'm alive, right? And all these caveats where you're like, oh, my God, this girl is living a fucked up life at the age of 7, where she doesn't believe a doll can really protect her. She knows that for a fact. You know, she's probably dealt with many, many assassination attempts. You know, caveats with, I'll make you this promise, assuming I'm still alive, because there's a very real chance I will die at some point in the near future, right? Like, it's really sad.
And it's almost like Jordan's trying to give us a kind background for her before he begins the sort of like, you know, dating that she and Matt begin to do, because we've only had her in her other, you know, High Lady 2 in form as she's, you know, creeping on him around the palace and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So...
yeah. Also, chat's pointing out that maybe the doll thing is more being like, look, I realize you're the one person who absolutely wouldn't betray Choedan, so you're the only person I can trust, which made me reminded me of Pavara. That's why Cian goes to Pavara, is because she's like, your backstory is you could never be a dark friend. You just absolutely can't. It's just not also possible.
Like within all of the subtext seems to be that Surith all along has been his main target,
which is a good idea. I mean, Suroth has been a worthy target for spycraft this whole time. He's just picking up on the wrong clues is all. You have a direction, Almurat? That's where I'm at. Just skip it. Because, yeah, I agree, Morgan. It's exhausting trying to follow a QAnon person's actual blow-by-blow convolutions of their thing. I just want to skip to the part where Karede is like, do you have a direction?
Yeah, I just want his final target, and I think his final target is supposed to be Surith, because they're looking for people with extra ambition, and all along I think it's been that he wants Surith, which is good. Yeah, go for her. You know, she deserves it.
The only thing I had underlined there is this web is more tangled than you imagine. It's like, yes and no. It's just not tangled the way you imagine at all.
Well, because he's forcing the facts to fit his worldview rather than objectively observing them and seeing what patterns emerge. That's the problem. He's assuming that everyone cares about politics and intrigue and rank the same way Seanchan do, which is like a thing that colonizers have done for time out of mind. And it's like, when will you learn that people have their own shit going on and they don't actually give a solitary flying fuck about whatever the hell you value?
He's also trying, in some ways, to put a mastermind behind something that was arranged by the pattern and Taviran. And so that's really hard because, like, it looks like it was masterminded by somebody, because there's no way these really out of the way odd coincidences could have happened the way they actually did. The idea that Matt ends up accidentally kidnapping the most important person in the realm, and while he's trying to sneak out a bunch of other people who just happen to have these connections to Suroth, like, it's just you're like, no, that wouldn't happen by accident. There's no way that, unless you have Taviran involved. And so I have a little bit of sympathy for him here, where he's trying to, like, put this all together when it's like, yeah, Taviran.
The Seanchan don't believe in Taviran, so
they don't even have the mechanic of Taviran to come to mind. It's not even in the back pocket.
They believe
in
the
not
Empress.
Read novels? Come on. Main character syndrome, Taviran, same thing, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
No, nothing except what the Imperial Press puts out is allowed to be read in the Empire. I'm guessing most of Seanchan actually isn't literate.
Karede is supposed to be inert to insult, but is still insulted and wants to know why. This is a little bit further back. They decide to have a drink with each other because Almurat more specifically wants to know if he has something to drink. And so he drinks the nasty wine that they had heated and it had cooled off. And it's like, pour for me as well. And so because the only other cup is the skull cup, he's like, got the skull cup and it looks metal as fuck. And it's just sort of like, that gives him a chance unintentionally because he wasn't going to, wasn't planning on drinking out of the skull cup, flex even extra hard after he's super pissed off that this Seeker has seemed to intimate that Seekers were involved in this extortion plot.
And I love at the end how when Ajimbura comes back in, he looks at the cup super insulted. Like, it's this big power play between these two big men, and then the wizened little rat, barely civilized man comes in and is like, what do you do with my cup, bro?
Yeah.
My
Drink
cup.
out of cup.
Yeah, you're like drinking out of my trophy cup. It's salting. I've never even washed it.
It's like, that's mine.
Yeah, which I get, man. That's rude, but
Help me out with this one little bit of his story. And it's the part where he says, most people call this black, right? Where he says, it seems 2 or 3 soldiers always accompanied her, the description of their armor. So I'm just trying to figure out who is actually creating this rumor. Who are these 2 or 3 soldiers? Who's this little girl? Who's with them?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
like
Semirog. Semirog's got some dark friends, and she's planted these rumors.
Do you think it's just her in a mask of mirrors? Like,
I bet it's old Cully and all his beggars being sent around.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a team of dark friends being deployed by Semirog. I don't think she's doing the work herself. Maybe she set up like one illusion or one net of compulsion, but like the rest of it's just dark friendery. That's what I think.
Yeah, or maybe just a couple of dark friends and then they're regular people that they work with. Rumors fly. People like to gossip. I don't understand people who don't like to gossip. It's like, have you ever worked a job? You always want to know why so-and-so got fired.
or axed, or literally in this case.
Yeah. Tell me, what did you hear? Of course you want to know. People who don't want to know, I don't understand them.
How can I avoid the same fate, right? Like that's sort of the whole point of a rumor and stuff like that is like, oh, I heard this person got killed. Like, I don't want to get killed. How do I not get killed? Like, what did they do to get killed?
They've done studies. There's an evolutionary purpose for gossip. So
Yeah. Why did he fuck up, and how do I not do the same thing?
Yeah.
So the only reason I thought it might be Suroth is because we see her in the Mask of Mirrors as Tuon when she attacks Rand later on.
Wait,
so
Semirog.
Sorry. Who did I say?
You said Suroth. I'm like, Suroth cannot put a mask of mirrors on.
Sorry, I meant Anath, and I say Suroth instead of Anath.
Okay.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
Anath,
yes,
aka
is
Semirog.
she operating as Anath or as Semirog? That is an interesting question.
I suppose there's a chance that she actually slapped on a disguise and has a couple of people throw on some armor, but if they had been actually engaging in the activity, people would have been saying that there's red and black armor, and Moore is sort of like, most people call that black and points it out. You understand me? And it being like, this rumor is going around. They're specifying that it's guys in black and green armor. So whoever started this rumor was Seanchan.
And same thing too. It's not Semirog doing it because the rumor includes a woman with a Shandar accent. Semirog is noted as having not picked up the Shandar accent. So this is entirely a figment that she's planted out there.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That helps me. And I unplugged my headphone cord. Hold on.
And then they toast each other's health, and he had planned on not taking a second drink after he took the first drink out of the skull cut, but he's like, okay, and he drains his cup because...
Bottoms up.
Yeah, Karede is metal as fuck.
So metal. And then Moore scurries out of there happy that he hasn't been eviscerated.
Yeah. And then Ajimbura comes in, and Karede doesn't even insult him by asking him if he listened in at the door. He's like, have you heard this rumor?
He's like, so what can you tell me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ajimbura's like, I don't listen to rumors. What are you talking about? Like...
Yeah, he's like, I've heard it, but like I didn't give it any credence. I'm too loyal to your sense of how the world works.
He says, I would not soil my tongue with such filth. So he doesn't say he didn't hear it. He said he wouldn't repeat it.
He's like, I wouldn't bring this to you because it's noise.
Mm-hmm.
And then Karede does, something that we accuse the Supergirls of doing as being a stupid thing, which is to walk right into it.
Yeah.
He says, the best way to defeat another's game was to make the game your own, which is just the experienced intelligence officer's version of the best way to deal with a trap is to spring it, which the Supergirls do as untested field agents who have never actually finished their academy training.
In fairness, he does spring it with a giant hammer, which is, 100 troops and a couple of Damane, right? Like...
Oh, yeah. And he comes out of it with his objective and almost no casualties. So it's great. It's fine. This is what happens when you have 40 years of experience.
But the only reason that happens is because Matt ends up not actually being a bad guy, because when they originally are coming after them, they end up having like a number of soldiers, and they pitch a number of battles where Matt beats the shit out of them all with his crossbowmen and everything, which is one of the things that makes my Knife of Dreams so fun. But he doesn't know what's happening, so he's trying to think, okay, so somebody among the blood might be trying to kill her. She might have decided to disappear, or this might even be some ploy by Moore dicking around for whatever reason. So he has no idea, and they don't even know where to go because they assume that they must have been on the road for days when, in fact, they just left, like, yesterday. I think the Der Soldam says that it was yesterday that the thing was going on, or is it still going on?
Oh, they leave the same day that the cleansing starts, and if we think that this is before the cleansing starts, then they're actually still sitting right outside the city.
Yeah, because remember, Matt was like, "We're sitting here, and they're going to assume we're running, but nope, no one would suspect to look right near the city." And here we see the people who were looking for him not looking right near the city.
Okay, and then as one thing I'm going to point out is he's riding out several hours out of Ebudar to meet up with his men. He's passing wagons, and he's many of the drivers and both merchants wore those distinctive Ilian or beards. It seems strange that Ilian continued to send its trade to Ebudar while fighting to resist the Empire, but people on this side of the Eastern Sea were often peculiar, with odd customs. It's like he doesn't understand why capitalists gonna capitalist, and they're sort of like...
They're imperialists. They don't. It's a very different thing. Imperialism can shut down a port for a while if the empire needs it. You know, capitalism can't do that because then you're hurting the bottom line.
Yeah, it's like we're gonna make money. You know, whatever.
We don't care if it threatens people's lives by doing it near a war zone. Yeah. Whatever, no big deal.
Yeah, Karede doesn't understand. If you're rich enough, you are above war. So. Yeah.
I also noticed his horse's name is Aldazar.
Yeah, it's Eagle.
Yeah, I was like, I recognize that. That's an old tongue word. That's like, and which I associate with Manetheren, right?
Kaldazar.
The red eagle of Kaldazar.
So you stick a C on the front, it's a red eagle.
Yeah, so again, it's like, this is a good guy. Matt can trust this guy. When Matt and this guy meet, it's going to be fine. Everything's fine.
Right on.
Well, I like that parallel that they both have the eagle sort of thing. They share iconography, and that makes them trust each other just a little bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
It's a reason for us to want them to trust each other, at least. I don't think that Matt ever learns Karede's horse's name.
Probably not. Yeah, I don't know.
On the other hand, he loves horses, so if they're going to talk about anything, it's probably going to be horses.
He ends up not really spending a lot of time with Karede. Karede goes back with Tuan. He spends time with Musenja, and I think Hartha stays with him. The first gardener. I love that.
Yes, it's like the first librarian or the first reasoner, but it's the first gardener. And also war.
Yes. Yeah. Well, people are weeds that need to be trimmed.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they head up the road, and Ajimbura kind of helps guide Karede to the group of all the forces that have made their own individual ways out. Because basically what happens is Moore leaves, and Karede sends a bunch of secret messages to everyone, and they all meet up outside of the city the next day, and we get a nice montage panning shot of our 100 guard and 20 Ogier gardeners and 6 Damani with some number of Suldam greater than 6 to manage them.
And then I don't think we see them again until the next book.
I don't
think not until they meet up with Matt. No, not until Knife of Dreams. Yeah. So this is sort of just like a little seed that gets planted for the next time they meet up with Matt.
I was so excited to see them again. I was like dying every page that they didn't come back, like the whole way through Knife of Dreams.
We get a scene with Karede in the middle of Knife of Dreams where he meets up with another Banner General and has Calf with him.
Yes.
And they get to experience the fallout of this rumor and how people are now talking shit about the Death Watch guards. And so we get that check-in, but it's not until Knife of Dreams.
And then yeah, we get the comment about like, well, how'd you get so many Damani out of the city? Exercise. Everyone always just believes a military exercise, a training, just regular exercise for health. Like it's just, normal maintenance. No one questions normal maintenance.
You're going for a hike, no problem.
Scheduled downtime on the server, no big deal.
And if you lose a few, it's just a training accident. You know,
happens.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah. Always does. Acceptable losses.
Yeah, again with Musenj, I love we have no target. We're trying to catch wind in a net. Just the sayings that the Ogier come out with. It's just like, yes, it's definitely an Ogier. Wish I had more about the Ogier Gardeners and how they sprang up as a military force. But, you have to wonder if maybe they just, in a more uncivilized, crowded continent, they had to defend their steading. And so they became more warlike. The people were trying to get on their steading, and because they had lots of steading, right? They never suffered from the longing. So, but why did they become so combative and warlike, and why are they willing to kill? It's like, I feel like someone, one of the Ogier, they got together and were like, these people are growing like weeds. We've got to trim them back, and someone's like, okay, we shall be gardeners to the human population, and you gotta, if you're a gardener, you gotta trim off those branches that grow in weird places and get out of line. And so I feel like that's the evolution of the gardeners, is somehow we need to somehow control or prune or nourish the humans, and to do that requires pruning.
So they domesticated people? Is that what you're saying?
And they did it through the Seanchan Empress, yeah. Because you always domesticate the queen bee, right? If you're harvesting honey.
I just feel like RJ explores on these different continental masses how things would have gone differently after the breaking, and so he's sort of like, okay, this happened with the Ogier here, but there's no way that the same thing would have happened on Shandar. So what would happen instead? And it makes sense that you would have something where, just like some of the Aiel stuck to the way of the leaf and some became warlike. So it's like the Ogier over here stayed peaceful. I think it's logical that, especially with how much chaos and fuckery occurs after, an apocalypse and the breakdown of society, that they would decide to take up arms to survive, perhaps to defend their steadings to keep the humans out. Maybe the humans wanted in to protect themselves from the armies of the night, or maybe they let humans in and they all defended the steadings from the armies of the night, or I don't know. Maybe the steadings were the only safe places in, these Aes Sedai fiefdoms.
So much good headcanoning potential. Also, notice in the collection of Damani, we have a former Aes Sedai. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One that Tuon broke herself.
Yeah, she has come that far. She has fallen so far from being an Aes Sedai that she is now trusted to come along on a top secret mission to retrieve the package.
Well, she was almost dead from trauma when she got back to the Seanchan continent, and so Tuon basically brought her back to health, and so she's, trauma bonded to her. And and I in Knife of Dreams, they make some comment about her being useless as a weapon, and it really fucks her up. She's super upset about it and gets her feelings hurt, and it's just sort of it's really sad to examine that kind of stuff that would happen, but it's sort of understandable when you're in a situation where you're trapped, your mind breaking, so that you can be okay with your situation, so you can at least be happy, or have some semblance of not being miserable. It's understandable how she might have gotten to that place. It's horrible, but that's why it's horrible.
Oh, I see no cause for laughter, Arthur rumbled. The Ogier was even more weathered and grizzled than Musenge, with long gray mustaches and eyes like black stones staring out of his helmet. He had been a gardener since before Karede's father was born, maybe before his grandfather. We have no target. We are trying to catch the wind in a net. Melitane sobered quickly, and Musenge began to look grimmer than Hartha, if that was possible. In 10 days, the people they sought would have put many miles behind them. The best the White Tower could send would not be so blatant as to head due east after trying the ruse of Johanna, nor so stupid as to head too close to north. Yet that left a vast and ever-expanding area to be searched. Then we must begin spreading our nets without delay, Karede said, and spread them finely. Musenge and Hartha nodded. For the Death Watch Guard, what must be done would be done, even to catching the wind.
And they will catch the wind. I mean, despite the fact that they're working on faulty information, they will manage to find their target and acquire her and bring her home. Like, they're good at their job.
How? That's one thing that...
Taviran.
Is that really it? That's just Matt, they're needed, so Matt wants them to show up, so they show up when they do. Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, yeah.
That you could say all of Moore's manipulation and all this thing that he's doing is really Matt's Tavernus trying to get Karede to the right place at the right time.
I mean, the whole world exists so that way Rand can have his epiphany on Dragonmouth. That's the whole reason the universe exists.
Well, that's a good point, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I maybe it's because they left so much closer together than they think, right? Like, because dude's expecting he's 10 days behind.
Fair.
But he's not. He's actually, like, a day ahead?
Yeah.
Or something? A day or more ahead?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. If he's traveling at any speed, he would be way ahead of the circus.
Way ahead of the circus, but he's also spreading his net finely. So I think that that's part of why he's able to find them, is because they end up actually coming behind him.
Yeah.
So as he's slowing down and looking around, that's when they come onto his radar. I think, maybe, I don't know. I don't remember details.
But one of the problems, because of the rumor, rewards start getting offered, like ridiculous amounts of rewards. Right. Like I think 100,000 gold crowns or something like that, which is like, I don't know what the translation. Probably not quite that much, but enough to set someone up comfortably for life. And so people are very motivated to basically find and kill. They're like, take her dead or alive. And so they've got people all over the place looking for her. And so the Death Watch Guard are trying to get to her ahead of all of these other people who wish her ill. So they actually help fight and kill other Seanchan, I believe. And I mean, most of them are conscripts, but not all.
Yeah, you do end up with like a small scale, like Civil War kind of battle happening on foreign soil.
A little bit.
Because of how the rumor mill has fired up so many people. It'd be like, I can retire if I do this. I can retire for life. Yeah,
send my kids to college, do all this kind of stuff. So yeah.
And yeah, so he searches for like 4 weeks before he finds Matt's band. And then he just comes across them. I can't find any more detail about that than just like he finds them. It's got to be a Taviran thing. Yeah, Morgan, it's been really good having you chatting theories on this chapter. This has been great.
Yeah, I like I said, I know you guys were kind of like, meh, about this book, and I was listening to you haven't dropped your last episode, but the one before that, and I'm very fond of this book for a lot of reasons, and yeah, it's narratively weak in a lot of ways, but it's very strong in its writing and storytelling purposes in many other ways. And so I was just sort of like, well, let me pick some of my favorite chapters and come in and talk about all the things that make it great, because especially on multiple rereads, it's got like just chef's kiss moments, including a couple of the most horrifying moments in the series, and just some beautiful, beautiful bits to it. So I'm excited to come and talk about it with you. And if you go back and listen to old WoT spoilers, I'm always like, oh, the slog's going to be so great because we're going to pull out all those details and really get into it. And I know I've been a little more down on this book than I think if it sounds like we're down on this book, it's not what I intended to be, because like I am very excited about it, but it's one of those things where there are certain parts of it that I find to be harder to read. The parent stuff can be just a little difficult after a while. It can. I always find it helpful to look and realize, oh, there's only like actually 3 chapters. There's more chapters from parents' POV here. Like in Winter's Height, there's only like 2.
So we'll have you to look forward to help us enliven this book when we get to In Our Own Rut. We'll have periodic infusions of Morgan to bring us back to reality.
I think I'm going to come back for chapter 15. So, yeah, I'll plan for that, and that'll be a bit, but...
You realize you could say any chapter right now, and I'd just be like, awesome, sweet, perfect.
No, I did schedule Morgan for everyone that she requested. It is in the spreadsheet, all of those, yes. We'll just be confirming the dates as we get closer.
Well, I really appreciate you guys were game. I really enjoy coming on the show and talking about it. Nice to listen to people talk about the story as it goes. and I just think about it ahead of time. I'm so far from this book, so it's just sort of like I've got stuff to say about it, but I can, because I'm following the path of the story, I only speak to what happens later by being like, okay, well, this is happening and it has significance later, but, I'm not ready to dig into the meat of later until I get to later, and so it's nice to come here and do that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I realize we are steeped in later now. I'm like, that's all we've got left is the later. Like
we're in the downhill part now.
Are you guys going to do a reread after, or are you going to do a different series?
I mean, that's still a couple years out, so, who knows at this point. We haven't committed to anything.
Yeah.
I can't imagine life after this podcast.
I know.
Right, yeah. But at the same time, it's like, do I want to start over from the beginning and do a reread? I'm not sure that that's something that I would be interested in doing. And no, the series has the same content density. I mean, we still have New Spring and all that stuff, too. So, we've got time, but...
Re-listen to our episodes and have opinions about them. Like,
honestly, I don't think I could do that emotionally.
Recursive.
Yeah. I don't think I could listen to my early episodes without just the cringing
It's
hard.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. I always find myself wishing, like, if somebody decides to listen to my podcast, I really hope they listen to a later episode first, like, so they can see that, and then if they go back and listen to the beginning when I'm like, don't even really know exactly what I'm planning on talking about, or it's like, I had to learn to lecture about English literature by lecturing, or doing this kind of stuff, because I was like, oh, well, maybe I ought to learn stuff that I never got to in college because I, had to drop out so early.
Yeah, so it's a mystery that we'll figure out someday, I guess.
Someday.
But I mean, Fox and Raven Media is starting to form in my mind in a way that will last for more than 3 years. So like,
we have this LLC. We're actually editing a couple of other podcasts. Like I'm not sure that we'll always be a voice on a podcast, but I'll probably always be involved in editing and producing them. Right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm getting tired of listening to myself.
You guys can
getting a little bit like, but I like producing content.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. So like, I want to stay involved in making podcasts and like helping them be a thing. But like, I don't know that I need my voice to always be in said podcast.
Well, helping other people is a really good thing. And there's just a lot of people with a lot of good stuff to say. So, and encouraging people, because a lot of people will start a podcast and then it's like hard to keep going, or for whatever reason.
Oftentimes I find people encounter a barrier they don't know how to overcome easily, and that stops them.
Yeah. And
like and for someone like us who's had the experience, it's like, oh, all you got to do is this.
Yeah, I was surprised. I got like my year-end review from Spotify because they bought Anchor. I just used that because it had a phone app, because I did my podcast on my phone for the first 8 months, and it said something to me like, you put out more content than 80% of other podcasters or something, and I was like, I did, because I slowed way down because of just things going on in my life, and then I had to go back to work full time, so I was surprised, and I was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, it's hard to put out content when you're trying to live a life, and sometimes it's just sort of you run out of steam, and having encouragement or having, people helping you is a good thing. So, you guys have possibilities.
So just go ahead and putting that out there, that if you or someone you know is trying to start a podcast and needs technical help, editing help, advice, we charge a low hourly rate of something very expensive. So I'm not going to give a number out there because reasons.
We're still workshopping that.
Yeah, we're still workshopping that, and it depends on what you want us to do.
But if you have thoughts about what you'd like for us to do, if you have thoughts about what kinds of services we could offer and what it would be worth to you, now is the time to make those opinions heard, because we are actively workshopping it.
Yeah, you guys have stuff and things. You're both very talented people. And yeah.
Now you're making
thank you.
me blush.
Aw.
Stop.
You deserve to
No.
blush. You're really talented. You guys are smart. You say smart things. You guys both, because of your, sciencey and mathy backgrounds, you put very, very intelligent, like technical spins on your understanding of the material. And because Jordan was a scientist, I appreciate that because I only have the most vague conceptual. I love that kind of stuff, and I wish that I could do math. I wish chemistry didn't make me want to light things on fire, because I would like to be.
Chemistry should make you want to light things on fire.
Fairness,
That's the whole
chemistry
point of
does.
chemistry.
Yeah.
I have one more thing.
One more thing.
One more
just,
announcement.
just one more thing.
Just one more announcement, because I did this really badly last episode, and it's cringy as hell, but I'm going to let you all hear it and then redo it here. So we have our first affiliate partner, and I'm pretty sure I said their name wrong last time. I think it's Querencia. I think that's how you're supposed to say it, not Quernica. I'm a Yankee with dyslexia. I don't say
How do you
words
spell
correctly.
it?
Queer, queer, ENCIA. And it, according to the website that I was reading today, it comes from a Spanish word.
Okay, Querencia.
Yeah, Querencia, I think is the correct pronunciation. So everyone who was undoubtedly cringing horribly at my pronunciation last time, sorry, there it is. That's the correct thing.
Way to be a white people.
I am a white people. I'm so a white people. My ring light is probably giving me sunburn right now. I'm so white. But anyway, so Querencia.co is a Black and LGBTQ plus lifestyle brand based in Columbus, Ohio. And they are doing an affiliate program with us and also with Travail and After Dark. And they have some really cool products. So you can go to their website and use promo code WOTS, WATTS, just the acronym of our podcast, and you will get 10% off of some cool like stickers or shirts. I've got a couple shirts coming in the mail because of course I had to test out the code, and then we'll get a little kickback, and that will be very neat. And you can support a new business that is tangentially related to the queer people who like to make Wheel of Time stuff in the most tangential sort of way. But I wanted to do that ad read slightly more smoothly than I did last time because I am a professional. It's ongoing education goals.
Hell yeah.
Other than that, I think I can let us go. That was all my spiels.
Unless you want to hear about my 11-point plan on how to fix Matt and Pat and Fain.
Yeah.
Rady's like, no.
I mean, do we have that kind of time?
I don't have anywhere to be, but
Go for it, dude.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. I'll throw it out there. So obviously in the course of re-listening to the end of the series, as I want to do, as we are at the end of the series, I'm thinking about Fain. I was thinking, okay, you need to do something to make it more exciting. So first of all, you have Pat and Fain doing his whole thing where he goes killing across the field at Choedan. And that's point one. Point two, you have a couple of scenes where people try and take him down. Maybe he turns one of our heroes into a zombie, right? Julian goes down. Why
you gotta break my heart like this?
I mean, like, yeah, like, and then we get zombie Julian, right? With his little
and then Matt has to kill him.
Zombie
Fez has moles. There's like a little cordyceps coming out of it. No.
His bamboo staff has started to like rot a little bit, but still like, is effective. And so, he's going to Shale Ghul to sort of eat the Dark One, right? And as he gets closer, there's like pushback, right? There's the battle between Rand and the Dark One. And so the white Mashadar sort of blows away, and then you get the dark of the Dark One kind of blowing away. And so you end up with the Aes Sedai symbol, right? The white of Mashadar and the black of the Dark One. From overhead, that's where you get the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, right? Are these two evils coming together, right? So everyone's trying to take out Fain. Matt realizes he can go into Mashadar, right? Like, it doesn't affect him. So he can actually get to Fain. So he goes in there and he's like, okay, I got, I'm going to go stab Pat and Fain because I'm the only one who can do it. We lost Julian. We lost, everyone else. I'm the only one who can do it. So, you get Matt walking into the thing and Fain's monologuing. I'm going to eat the Dragon Reborn. I'm going to take over. I'm going to become the new Dark One, yada, yada, yada. Matt stabs him. Fain goes, that's cool. I'm just going to sink into Mashadar and sink into the ground here instead of this body that I don't need anymore. Right? So he doesn't immediately fall over and die. Fain, anchors into the ground the way Mashadar wants to anchor into Shadow Logoth. Right? And Fain's gone, right? There's no more mind associated with Shadow Logoth anymore. Shadow Logoth starts to eat, the Dark One. Basically starts to end the last battle by destroying both Rand and the Dark One, right? Meanwhile, Matt's standing in the middle of it going, fuck, what am I going to do? This is the end of everything, right? The battle's going to be over. Fain's going to take over. The Mashadar is going to remake the world in its own image. But he realizes he can pull Mashadar into himself because he's got part of Mashadar in him. So Fain goes out. So Matt's in there in the middle of Mashadar. He sucks Mashadar into himself and sacrifices himself in the way Egwene does to stop the end of the battle. And we end up with a dead Matt, who I think is a better sacrifice than Egwene for the end of the last battle. And then that brings Choedan and the Seanchan into the battle because Matt has sacrificed himself. That gives them motivation, which is, of course, the whole point of the dice, because the dice were always leading Matt to Choedan because that was how they were going to win the last battle, because his death was going to bring Choedan and the Seanchan into the battle to finish off the win, right? And then as he dies, you have Suan, right? The quote where she tells him the story about the guy pulling children out of a burning house, saying he wouldn't stop going back as long as there was one left inside. Are you like him, Matt? Will you be there when the flames are high? And then he fucking dies, right? Like, way more Fain, way more significance,
way
killing
more
off,
menace.
Like the death of Matt, which is much more, I think, important and interesting. Like the bringing the Seanchan in and making that significant, more significant than the relationship he has with them now. Also making Fain a real threat.
That's honestly really good. I also like the idea because I feel like the ter'angreal dagger that hides you from the shadow, I like the idea better that Fain and Mashadar distract the Dark One, and that's how Rand is able to get in there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely workshop. Like, this was just like
It's so much better. It's so much better.
And then you have the three things coming together. The two evils, right, are still, forming this two halves in the same way that you have, like, the light and the dark. And it's just much more balanced, in my opinion. And it's just more significant.
And then Matt gets to do something, like, metaphysical, right? Because Rand is doing metaphysical shit. Perrin and Gaul are doing metaphysical shit. And Matt is just the big fat general. Like, he's just the general of all the armies. It'd be so cool for him to do metaphysical shit, taking down the, like, other evil of Eredhall and Fain and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Slayer goes down to Perrin, and Slayer's not even a worthwhile threat. Egwene
could still sacrifice herself, too, because I think Jordan's plan was for her to be pregnant with Gawain's baby at the end of the series.
Let's get her out of here.
I feel like death is a far better fate. So
no, I do not want Egwene, career woman, finding true satisfaction in a pregnancy. No.
I still would love to see Egwene rule the White Tower for generations.
That would be fine.
Like,
I'd be fine
cool with that.
Yeah.
But she's a career woman through and through. No babies.
Yeah. Give her a year to recover from the loss of her warder,
I like the idea of one of the three boys dying in the battle.
Also,
I feel like Rand should have died. I find
yes.
I find the body swap incredibly ghoulish and uncomfortable. Like, some stolen body from some poor asshole from the borderland, and you're just driving off in stolen property and never asking where it came from, and it's just like, that's creepy.
And he needs to rest. The man is tired.
Yeah.
He's been doing the work of 2 traumatized lifetimes this day. He needs to just chill and sleep. Him and Morden both need to go get reincarnated properly.
Well, and you've got to figure, I mean, it seems like he would also be a hero of the Horn since all the heroes know him, so he should probably just hang out until Iron Riyadh.
Exactly. Go have a spa millennium. Like, come on.
In fact, that's kind of my theory of how he lit the pipe, is that that's where he is.
Yeah. It's such a Tel-Iran Riyadh thing to think of something and have it come through. It's like, what in the Tel-Iran Riyadh bubble?
Although then I will ask you, what is the golden stuff underneath the black stuff in his brain? Because remember, because when he has that moment, Nynaeve delves him, and there's like a golden set of wires that protects him from the black taint.
It's the Mormon reverse brainwashing.
Oh,
Reverse brainwashing of being a Mormon.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I assumed it was pure. He's channeling pure one power.
I don't think he's channeling. I think it was some weird, like, metaphysical, like, I've come to praxis, or whatever the word is for it. Gnostic ecstasy. Remember when we had Abigail on and she was really given that whole, like, insta-fix of trauma a run for its money?
Yeah.
Like, that golden light coming out from under the prongs, it has that same, like, tacky Band-Aid feel to me as how Veins of Gold is just like, and now he's Zen Rand. Like,
Yeah.
it bothers me in the same way. And so, like, my uncharitable side wants to just, like, fling it at Brandon Sanderson's Mormonism, which is probably not fair.
I don't want to pick on Brandon Sanderson for his Mormonism. That fucking dude who wrote that article did it enough. That article is so terrible.
I enjoyed the community response, and oh my God, Morgan, I loved your insight about Brandon's response.
Oh, right?
Like, that was fucking icing and bows and confetti.
Oh, I missed that.
And
Can you,
oh God, Morgan, take it away.
Okay, so the dude, did you read the hit piece, the article?
Yeah, I read the hit piece.
Okay, so the dude's just, prosaically being like, Brandon's a bad writer. Brandon's a bad writer. So Brandon writes this very kind response where he's basically, in all of the subtext of the response, is talking about how, the guy was obviously frustrated that he couldn't find anything to write about because admittedly Brandon Sanderson is boring. Like, he admits that, yeah, his life is kind of uninteresting. Mm-hmm. And so
he's a nerd introvert that likes to write all the time and do nothing else.
Yeah. And so the subtext of it, though, is basically that, like, anybody who is a decent writer at all can find something to write about if you, go visit someone, spend time with them, or go to but it was so kind and so subtle in there that he, woven in the subtext of his response, is like, this dude's a bad writer. And I'm just sort of like, so you guys, some asshole just being like, Brandon Sanderson's a bad writer, and Brandon Sanderson's like, here's my gracious response where I'm
sorry you found it hard to do what should have been a simple piece of journalism.
Like, let me tell you how you're a bad writer. And I was just sort of like, chef's kiss. That was lovely.
Didn't notice that. I read Brandon. I didn't read the hit piece because I just read everyone's responses and watched a bit of Daniel.
Oh, Daniel was,
Daniel was pissed. But then I read Sanderson's entire response because he's really wordy. But, like, I wanted to let him say his piece, and I didn't pick up on that at all. I just saw the nice, courteous, not being mean, like, Mormon exterior. Mm-hmm. And then you pointed out that, like, he just spent, like, a bunch of words saying one time, looks like you're a pretty bad writer, dude. Sorry. Sorry you found it so hard to do what we do as professionals.
Weeks and weeks.
That was what's called a Midwest response.
So subtle.
That was a Mormon fuck you. It was great. It was beautiful. It was very impressed. And I've only ever read his, what he wrote of the Wheel of Time. And, I don't think he's he's not my style of writer because I don't like the depth that he goes to, but he doesn't make him a bad writer. He just writes how he wants to write. And feel like writers, a lot of them write for themselves. He writes how he likes to write for himself, and people like to read what he writes, and it's sort of like, so people who don't like it, fuck off and read something else.
That's the beauty of art, is you do it to please yourself, and the people who like it like your authenticity and like what you're doing, and the people who don't can go pick from the literal infinity of other media. It's like, yeah, he doesn't really do it for me, but, like, he's fine.
And I read all of Brandon Sanderson's stuff. I love his writing. I wouldn't say it's the best thing I've ever read, certainly, because I've read Wheel of Time. It's good, and it's entertaining, and it's complicated, and it fits together, and he builds really good characters. Although, again, I don't think his characters are as good as Jordan's, right? Like,
that's hard to do, though.
Yeah. But at the same time, his writing, he likes to pull the cover. He likes to reveal what's underneath the subtlety at the end. He doesn't leave a lot of subtlety to be discovered. He likes to go and see it was Agatha all along, like he wants that reveal at the end. And I think that hurts the readability of his stories because there's less to discover because he likes to show off his writing at the end of it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have a lot less to parse out once I get into the Sanderson books. And I don't want to spend a lot being like, so this isn't nearly as good as this because I don't like to talk shit. I'm doing this to say, nice, interesting things, or else I do talk plenty of shit, but it's like, it is what it is. I try to say nice things as well if I'm going to complain about something, but.
Yeah. But what I find most like really cool about this whole thing was just like how he interacts with his fans and like who Brandon Sanderson is as an author, like as a publisher, as a person who responds to his fans, as a person who makes his fans feel seen. Like he's doing so much more good for the world than most authors, despite the fact that he's an introvert that just wants to write all the time. He's like upending publishing, like just casually on the side. Like he's a really cool dude. The writing, I'm sure someday the writing will do it for me, but right now I am just like, it's not.
His prose, the dude was complaining about his prose is kind of basic, and that's fine. If you want to write beautiful, or if you want to read beautiful prose, read Hemingway. I've like The Old Man and the Sea, that's a very short book of beautiful, concise prose. I love that book.
Yeah, the prose is clearly a delivery system for Sanderson to deliver his story and his characters and his magic system and his world building. The prose doesn't have to be fancy. It has to be understandable, clear, and a way to convey. And which is also, it's not like he's writing all these words. There are parts of it that are incredibly beautifully written. There are parts of it that are elevated. It's not all of it, but it doesn't mean he's a bad writer when he can write, this guy's like, well, concentrate on writing better words. Well, he writes just as many really high class good words in his stories. It's just he surrounds it with all this other stuff that's a little more direct.
And prose is only part of it.
Yeah, and the idea that there's one objective form of good writing is a very boring world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very English class. I never got out of high school English.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
The whole world the same? Like, no, everyone has to do art that speaks to them. And if you happen to end up with a following, like, great. But, like, if you try to make art for your audience, it's going to be stale and boring.
Yeah, Jordan Con's next week, so you guys aren't going?
No.
Okay.
No, I have to pick where I'm going to spend that energy and social spoons and also money.
Money, yeah.
Vacation days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I picked WatCon and I am going to WatCon. I am definitely going to WatCon, but yeah, no, not JordanCon. I have to have FOMO about JordanCon.
Yeah, I was only going to do one, but my father died at the beginning of 2023, and so dealing with his estate and trying to unfuck everything has just been a giant nightmare. And I was like, I need to have some escapism because it's just been like really difficult and a lot of work. And I've been doing a lot of next level adulting and learning things. I got to hire an attorney, and I've learned a lot of new things. I'm going to have to sell some things, and just it's a lot of stuff. But I'm going to start going to school in the fall, so it's like there's bright sides at the end of the road. And so I just kind of feel like I'm working, at least I'm like earning, being able to go to school. So that's something. So yeah, it's a lot. It's been a lot this year.
That does sound like a lot.
I decided I get to go to WatCon and JordanCon for that, because I was only going to go to one. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I deserve to go to both.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So I'll see you guys at WatCon.
Excellent. That's lovely to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Okay. But thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad that you invited yourself back, but also to that one person out there who wrote me and said, when is Morgan coming back? You're welcome. You are the one guest we've had that has been asked, will you please get this person back? Just broadly, not even for a particular episode, just broadly. So yes, welcome back to Podcast of the Dragon, the topical literary analysis of all the things in thematic fashion rather than chronological fashion of Wheel of Time.
Thank you, one person out there.
Everyone needs to listen to this podcast. It's so, like, of course, I'm a million years behind on it, but it's amazing, amazing content. So,
Same. Actually, my favorite episodes of this podcast are the ones with Morgan on it too. Those really are. I think they're always a cut above.
You're embarrassing.
Not to put any pressure on you or anything, but I do enjoy you turning beet red. So I can always throw a compliment out there.
Well, I messaged Karede and I was like, so I'm going to put out a bunch of potential, episodes to come on to because I've heard you guys complaining so much and I happen to be incredibly fond of this book. I think that The Crossroads of Twilight is narratively the weakest of the Wheel of Time books, but there's tons of great writing in it as far as minor character explorations where I feel like Robert Jordan is able to flex his chops by doing point of view and showing the things that he can do, which is why I specifically requested to come in on this episode because this is one of my favorite minor characters and I feel like some of the best writing he ever does in the entire series in this particular chapter. So,
and I'm coming around to that. Like I both am on the opinion that the slog is something that's real because the writing style changed and you're getting big long chunks of individual characters, which feels slower, like just because of the writing style. And also just because there literally are fewer days in each book happening. We're literally down to 10 days to 30 days in some of these books, as opposed to 6 months or almost a year in the first few books. But at the same time, as we're digging into it, it's not like I'm not enjoying Jordan's writing just as much. We still love these chapters, and I still love getting into it. It's just not quite as action-packed. I'm not sure if that's the right way to, go about it. But it's certainly there's times when things are like maneuvering a little bit slower in terms of plot.
Yeah, I think that the slog is real and that is not a bad thing. Like, I got yelled at on Twitter by a random person. It's not like someone who matters, but I got yelled at by Twitter by someone being like, why are you using the same tired old arguments? Literally all I said was that the pace goes back to its book 6 feel by the time you get to book 11. Someone said, wow, things are slowing down. Does it change? And I said, yeah, it comes back book 11. And someone was yelling at me like, well, why are you using the same tired arguments? It's like, it's not a negative. It's just a fact.
That's not a tired argument, but you were just saying that those old arguments have legitimacy.
Yeah, it was projection. But I really do, like, as much as I believe in the slog, and I do have my eye-rolling complaining parts about it, like, it's just what it is. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is what it is. It's not a complaint to say the slog is real. There's lots to complain about in it.
The Wheel of Time is an organic book series. Like, if you have an organic book series, like, look at biology, look at science, look at all of that kind of stuff. There is nothing clean and not messy, so if you're gonna, like, breathe life into something, you're not going to have perfection. If you want perfection, have something engineered where you have, everything clean and perfect, but it's not going to be alive. And so you've got to look at all of the imperfections that way and accept the fact that you're going to get things where you're like, what the fuck? Which is why, your food hole and your breathing hole are right next to each other. And that that's not intelligent design.
So wait, are you calling this thing an appendix? Because an appendix in a book is a totally different thing. And I don't want to get confused.
I'm more saying it's not a perfect metaphor, but just that Robert Jordan, I don't want to say he pulled the Wheel of Time out of his ass, but that it is not a strictly plotted book as such. He wrote bits and pieces. He was kind of a pantser, despite his great foreshadowing and stuff like that. And so he just kind of did what he did and let it do its thing. And that's a living thing, and living things aren't perfect. So it's just sort of like, and that makes it fun to talk about.
Yeah, because he planted a lot of seeds and watched them grow. That's why his foreshadowing looks so good, is it's a bit of leaving things open and a bit of like retconning like a fucking master. And like having those two things together let him grow organically, which is to say, okay, I'm going to plant these things about legends that I know I'm going to use the Fisher King legend. I know I'm going to use the Jesus legend. So I plan a bunch of stuff about that early on in the series, and I make it vague enough that I can sort of do whatever I want with it later on. And it looks like he's this master of foreshadowing, which I guess he is.
He is. It's brilliant on a meta level, which makes it unique to everything else and fun to talk about. So it's sort of like, why not? And people who don't like it can not like it for a ton of reasons. I don't understand the people who think it's perfect, because I'm just sort of like, and I wouldn't have fun talking about books that were perfect, because it's like, then what am I supposed to do? Just fillet an author for an hour talking about it? That's boring.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. It's just better than anything else that's ever been written. That's all. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It's just, there's nothing else nearly as good out there. That's my take.
It's just my favorite. That's all. It's an entirely subjective opinion.
Right. Yeah.
But it's very real in terms of how I live my life. It is a life-defining opinion I have, but it is just an opinion.
It's amazing the difference in effort in syncing them up. As long as they're within like 30 seconds of each other, it really isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. The amount of rearranging I end up doing, both on purpose and on accident.
Wait a minute.
It's the way that my process works. Like, the time it just doesn't matter. I change things, which is fun. I like changing things.
So basically what you're saying is you make us say anything you want.
I have god powers.
You make her sound like an evil puppet master.
I can put words in and out of people's mouths. It's kind of cool.
That kind of sounds dirty, actually.
I was going to say.
Take it all away.
I'm like, A, Seth is a pervert, and B, that was exactly where my mind went to.
Hey, it takes one to spot one.
Also, Jedi Pants' art is amazing. The skull mug and everything.
She's been knocking it out of the park with these chapter art. Every week I just look at it. I'm like, I can't wait to see what's...
This isn't even Lilligin.
This is Lilligin.
Yeah,
okay.
This is our...
I made assumptions. Thank you, Jedi Pants.
Thank you so much, Jedi Pants. This is very cool. Not saying it's not as cool as Lilligin's. I'm just saying, like, this is our substitute artist.
Yeah. No.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, we got the armor, we got a doll, we got a skull mug, and then we got a little glowy ball, and all on this cool, like, crystal surrounding a vortex or something. It's great. I really like it.
Like a geode void.
Yeah.
Geovoid thing. Void?
Yeah, I'm here for it. So.
Well, and Lilligin also helped us with our Watt Idol video.
Yeah, Lilligin is the backing vocals. Because I am terrible at creating harmonies. I love harmonies in my head. They always are really bad out in the world, which is fine for me. I can sing out of tune all I want. It's fine. But I needed someone else to step in and create a little bit of harmony. And we didn't do a particularly, like, true to form of the song harmony, but it still sounds nice. There's two voices blending, so,
No, I'm excited. I quit my job because dealing with my dad's estate is a full-time job, so I have time at night to, manage all of this stuff and also be able to do Watt Idol or message a radio and be like, I want to be on this chapter and this chapter and this chapter, and, I can conform to your schedule, so very life-changing. This has been a life-changing year, so...
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's life is life, so... thank you, Jedi Pants. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, but it's just sort of like you gotta roll with the punches, and so yeah. And everybody's been lovely, and I'm one of those people where life's gotta force me to make changes because I get comfortable and I have narrow emotional and mental bandwidths. I started a podcast and learned new things because there was a pandemic and I had downtime, and so I did that, and, now I have this, and it's just sort of, so you roll with it, and you do what you can do. So, anyway, it's nice to see you, friends, and, be able to come and do this, and so for anybody who's going to be at JordanCon next week, this is coming out, I'll be at...
This is coming out, yeah, JordanCon will be happening when this comes out.
Okay. Well, if you're at JordanCon listening to this, I'm there. You can come and see me and say hi.
Also, if you're at JordanCon listening to this, what are you doing? Go talk to people at JordanCon.
Go talk to other people.
Yeah, go talk to Morgan. Well, not for too long, but
well, you're probably actually having some nice downtime, and I don't know why you have human voices in your ear. Go listen to some like sounds of nature or something.
Just because we're not going to be there doesn't mean you have to listen to our podcast at JordanCon just to get to feel like we're there.
Yeah.
But if you do, I understand. You know, I get it.
If anyone is listening to this at JordanCon, let us know, because apparently we're making this a bit now.
Yeah. Well, I have a much bigger social battery this year, so I don't feel like I'm going to be running off to my room every hour to like sit for 2 hours and try to So yeah, it's better. I'm really looking forward to seeing people and just actually socializing. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?